Good day, familia. This is Ray Collazo, and you're watching and listening to the Collazo Show exclusively here, live on Substack. The Collazo Show provides analysis and commentary on the intersection of leadership, politics, y cultura. Thank you so much for joining us. This is your host, Rafael Ray Collazo. Please subscribe to the Collazo Show on my Substack page. We released the Collazo Show first exclusively live on Substack, and then later on put clips on our YouTube page. So you can also subscribe to our YouTube page at the Collazo Show, but really encouraging everyone, even if you happen to catch a sneak peek or social media clip on another social media platform, please join and subscribe and join the fun over here at Substack. That is going to be the best way to support the show. And we're going to really use this platform to create and grow the Collazo Show community. Thank you all so much for joining us. I hope you had a good President's Day weekend. We'll talk later about it. This is the legacy episode of the Collazo Show. Later on in the show, we're going to talk about the issue I believe will define all of our legacies from this era and what we need to do at this moment to define our own legacies. You know, when I'm releasing this show, Familia, it's day 10 of the Benito Bowl era. So I think it's time we have enough space from that epic performance a few Sundays ago in Santa Clara, California, to start the conversation about the true legacy of the Benito Bowl. Yeah, that incredible performance has reverberations in areas and communities, in issues that I don't think even Benito could have imagined. The sparks of conversation, awareness, resistance, activism, art, content, unity, multiple global movements are being fomented by that brother's show. We're going to talk about that at the end of the show and some other thoughts about sort of the legacy of that performance, and including how it impacts the legacy of some other incredible global stars that have been part of our lives for quite some time. But I want to start with, really just talking about legacy and what that word should mean to us. Legacy is the long-lasting impact of a person's life. Not like so much social media and so much of this, I need it now culture. Legacy is not about virality with one clip. Legacy truly is about when it's all said and done and we are no longer here, or maybe toward the end of your life, if you're lucky, to really have a sense of the impact you've had on others and how you're going to be remembered by your children, your family, your loved ones, your community. If you're lucky to have people remember you. I think about this word a lot because when you're a parent and you become a parent, it's you kind of get obsessed with this question. Because especially when you're a dad with boys that I have 2 boys, you kind of become obsessed with this question. Because now it impacts me on both ends of the spectrum of my life. Because on one end, I've always been obsessed with my legacy in a sense that my career path as a activist and as a content creator using podcasting and kind of this long form audio video platform format were examples of how I felt like I was kind of like my legacy was to kind of finish my dad's unfinished business, who was also an actor. I was with him today, former young lord and radio guy in Philly, and thankfully still with us and kicking. And when my mom passed a couple years ago, it really kind of made me think about it differently, because I always thought I was trying to clean up my dad's unfinished stuff. But when in fact, the animo was really about trying desperately to try to, in some way, honor my mom's incredible legacy. And I knew it, but I didn't really know it until she passed. Because that's a whole other podcast set. But set of podcasts. But the bottom line is, you don't. I didn't even know the half of it on some level. That woman's impact on people to this day is just so incredible. And so I realized at that moment that it was even more of a responsibility for me to honor her legacy continually. And then as a father, there's nothing better, like literally nothing, than those moments where you sense it, they tell you, or it's clear to you that your children are proud of you. There's really nothing better than that. And now that my boys are teenagers, I get these glimpses of moments like that, where they make it clear, like, hey, they appreciate Pop, they love Pop, and they respect Pop and what he's about. And really, there's nothing. There's that's priceless, fam. There's no. I don't need to go to the Maldives on a yacht to feel anything that doesn't give you. So I think about this legacy conversation with some of these people in the Trump administration, and thinking about what possibly they're thinking about their legacy. I know y'all saw Attorney General Pam Bondi in that hearing last week. I mean, you're the highest ranking law enforcement official in this country, and you not only admit that a large amount, at minimum, the ones that were in that room at that moment, of women that through the Epstein network had credible allegations of being victims of sexual assault, and as young women, so being attacked by predators and pedophiles, and they all raised their hand to say, we have reached out and made ourselves available and let the Department of Justice, FBI, know that we have a story to tell. And all those women got up and subsequently talked about and raised their hand when the question was, as the DOJ or the FBI contacted any of you to follow up? And the answer was not one. And then pressed at that moment, given the opportunity to try to start making amends, say, hey, my bad, we'll follow up. I'll make sure that don't happen. Sorry for what happened to you. Pam Bondi, at that moment, is probably going to define her legacy the rest of her life. Not only didn't turn around and immediately profusely apologize and show sympathy for these women. This is, by the way, this was a woman in this position. Not a small thing. Not only didn't turn around and profusely apologize, she didn't even turn around. She wouldn't even look them in the eye. You know why she couldn't look them in the eye? Because she couldn't. Because that would be looking herself in the mirror and knowing that she's been harboring. I mean, if you look at her history, Attorney General in Florida, she's been harboring this Epstein crowd for over a decade. She didn't even have the vergüenza to do it. I think about Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State, out at the Munich Security Conference. Let me say some things, my man. He's doing his impression of saying racist shit really like really professionally, like JD Vance, just say it. Oh, quote, we must also gain control of our national borders, controlling who and how many people enter our countries. This is not an expression of xenophobia. It's not hate. No. It is a fundamental act of national sovereignty. He said, not just an abdication of one of the most basic duties owed to our people. It's an urgent threat to the fabric of our societies and the survival of our civilization itself. So this is our Secretary of State going to Europe and saying that Europeans are letting too many brown and black people into their countries, and that the United States is doing a better job of not letting any more black and brown people into their country. And in fact, we're not only getting rid of black and brown people and people of all, but we're actually torturing them along the way while we do it. And he's saying that that's what we need. Everyone else should be doing, acting like barbarians like us. This other quote, this quote fucks me up. There's another quote from Secretary of State Rubio at the Munich summit. The quote, the cohesion of our societies, the continuity of our culture, and the future of our people are at stake. ¿Qué cultura, Marco? ¿Qué cultura? Because obviamente no hablando de lo multiculturalism where we're all together and we all contribute to it. Because you're saying we got to stop with all this mixing. So la cultura de lo blanco, y incluye su familia ahí. Your parents, your family, who at one point came ante de Castro, so your families were not political refugees, and at one point were documented in this country. So that includes you guys. And by the way, hablando los criminales, tú tienes familia in your fam get moved a whole lot of weight back in the days, fam. So we're gonna get nitpicky about who's a criminal and who should be here and who's deserving and who's dañando la cultura a nosotros. I mean, obviously, brother, you've been very successful. But have you been? Yeah, I mean, you're as prominent a lot. Certainly, the most prominent Latino in U.S. politics. Well, I guess we'll talk about AOC. That guy. That's debatable, I guess. But certainly in the Republican Party, and that your appointment was historical. Latino Secretary of State, not a small thing. Pero at what cost? So you're positioning yourself to run a Republican primary at J.D. Vance, and so he's being crazy racist, even though la mujer de color, su mujer, una colombiana. So y'all are going to be we're going to be as racist as possible, even though that's bullshit because of your whole fam. So you got to do the same thing. You got to be worse, just nicer about it. Okay. So, what's the point of this? So you have power to do what? So to treat Latino immigrant communities like shit and torture them? I'm going to talk about that in a second. I mean, ¿qué está pasando with these kids in these detention centers is so fucking disgusting. It's the most outrageous thing I think of. And this is something you're pushing. You're in Europe telling Europeans they need to be more like that and torture their brown and black people like we're doing here. What kind of legacy is that? Oh, by the way, ¿qué está pasando in Venezuela? Basically, Venezuela's a quasi-colony of the United States, stealing their resources, destabilizing the country, while the Cubans and the Venezuelan immigrants here are getting treated like crap. And, okay, there's politics. Okay, I understand. I don't like authoritarian regimes that don't have democracy either. So we have some, and I always gave those Cuban Congress people a little bit of wiggle room on it because obviously, having dictators and stuff ain't cool. I don't care if you're right or left. So I never believed in the rulers of Cuba for all these years. That being said, we're really going to block all their oil and all that so that they starve to death? Is that really what we're going to do? We're going to hurt Cubans? And by the way, most of them are the darker, the Afro-Cubans, the poor, the ones that are going to suffer the most of them. Más pobre y lo más negro. So that's going to solve it. That's going to solve something in Cuba. That's going to make you feel good about yourself at night. I don't get it. Lastly, Florida Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar criticized Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime performance by quote saying it was exclusive. He named all the country. But anyway, it was exclusive because it was in Spanish. It's so laughable if you know about this woman's background. Congresswoman Salazar, her whole career was Spanish language television in Miami. This is a person born and raised in the United States and in Puerto Rico who speaks English with an accent. Her whole career, her whole life is built on multiculturalism and the Spanish language and the Latino culture. She built her whole career about all her money. She's the U.S. Congress representing that flavor of our country. God bless that. And then she's going to go and crap on Bad Bunny because Trump said to do it. And by the way, every time she supports Trump, he steps on her and he keeps deporting more and more Venezuelans and more Cubans and treating them like all the other brown and black people. And at some level, you could argue worse. Think about the Lo Venezolano with CCOT and all that. They're really bad on the Venezuelans. And she was supposed to be their champion, and then she complains, and then she blames Biden, and she... Que legada, huh? What a legacy that is. Looks like our man Elliot Rodriguez might be running in that race. Very exciting. When I was a kid, TV personality in Philly. Now he's been a TV personality in Miami many years. So we look forward to Elliot throwing his hat in the ring. We'll see how that goes. He's been hinting at it on social media. So, I guess at the end of the day, familia, that's kind of the question. It's really bigger than politics. In your search for power in your life, in your search for moving up some ladder of success, career, wanting to appease the powerful on our levels, our bosses, or people that are more powerful in their industries, or people that are more you perceive more powerful in your own community or the family dynamics. To appease those people, what are you willing to sacrifice? Because we all do it. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not pure with that, but I don't think I sacrifice my integrity, and I can sleep at night. My wife, a lot of people in my life goof on me. They said, "Man, Ralph, you political guy, you know how to talk this stuff. If you just sold out and became MAGA, you'd probably be a millionaire." I was like, "Fucking right, I would be." Well, what would it matter? Because y'all wouldn't be friends with me anymore. Hey, you know what I would never want? Ever. I don't care. There's no price for it. Is later on in my life or when I'm gone and my boys are adults and they walk around, somebody whisper, "Oh, you know, their dad was that guy that vendió la comunidad hispana, that sold his soul to these people, that que, um, you know, that were part of those like Nazis that tortured those kids. Remember those kids and ICE and those people that got fucked up, and he was part of that. He was a Latino that co-signed to allow that. What a fucking disgusting human being their dad was. Wow, he must have been an asshole to them. That ain't gonna happen. Not perfect. I'll make mistakes, but that's not gonna happen. And guess what? I sleep at night because at least I'm trying to live the lyrics here, fam. And I wish more thought that way. And I pray for those people because that's no way to live. There's no way to have a legacy in your life, regardless of look. I'm sure these people, okay, Mark, I'm sure he's cool with his wife, kids. I have no doubt. Family man. Seems like a decent human being in that sense. And all these people, I don't know these people. I'm sure they're fine with their fam. And that's going to be a big stain. That's going to be a big stain. By the way, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was at the Munich conference. And when people said, "Wow, you know, you these progressive options, you're trying to disrupt the whole economic system, government system," she said, "Quote, we have no other choice. The only alternative is a world that is dominated by a handful of elites, a handful of oligarchs that sit on pretend democracies and make backdoor deals with one another." And that, to me, is not the world that the vast majority of the people want to live in. Bravo, AOC. Interesting how she's positioning herself as a global leader going to these international things. It's very fascinating. She definitely made headlines in Germany last week. And, you know, it's not what we're going to get into here today. We have a lot of time to talk about. There's nothing more I love to talk about than 2028 and the presidential. I mean, big primary fights amongst Democrats. There's nothing more fun than that for me, fam. So horse race jockeying and all that is the best. We're going to talk about that for years. You know, if she wasn't a Puerto Rican female and progressive, if you just looked at her Q rating, she clearly would be the front runner. But nobody thinks of it that way because nobody wants to admit that this young Puerto Rican woman that's gonna turn off the corporate interest in the Democratic Party and the APAC interest in the Democratic Party off. That's really it. Let's keep it real. So they're going to prop up these other characters, and I like some of them more than others. But I like it's not like the rest are scrubs. But they're going to try to position them as assume they're the leading candidates, when in fact, on paper, she's the leading candidate. Now, she may not do it. There's a million reasons why you don't do it. Does she run for the Senate, which I'd be fine with? Schumer, to me, is kind of like a dead man walking at this point for future runs. And, you know, maybe that's the deal they cut. They kind of clear the field for her to take the Senate seat because the presidential run will cause them a lot of headaches. But to say she's not a serious contender, I mean, you just not looking at any of the math here. And by the way, fam, let me leave you this little nugget. If Democratic primary politics, if you look at the numbers, is about moderate, olderish, mature, I'd say mature, moderate leaning Black women in the South. If you look at who controls Democratic primary politics in our country, regardless of how you order it, ultimately that's where the votes are. Who's got a better chance of connecting with those people than her? Could Bashir do that? Could Wes Moore do that? Could Pritzker do that? Could Shapiro do that? Could Buttigieg do that? Could AOC do that? Something to think about, fam. Something to think about. All right. Let's talk about on a not a lighter note. You know, the more I think about it, familia, you're listening to the Collazo show, exclusive on Substack here as I try to produce my own show here. Okay. I want to talk for a second about this is I think going to be the test for us. You know, I'm talking about we have to hold ourselves accountable in the legacy conversation, familia, because at the end of the day, how all of us watching this, listening to this, I'm wearing a hat, by the way, not because I'm a cool guy or trying to rock. Spring training is starting. That's nice. And I did get a little love for my own workout hat the other day, but I need a haircut desperately. And, you know, I just think it looked better this way. So I'm not trying to, this is not a sports show, even though we talk sports. Much respect to my man Santos, the baseball aficionado, for giving me a shout out for my own workout hat the other day. He's going to be on the show very soon to preview the World Baseball Classic. I'll come in a few weeks. We got a few weeks for that. My brother Michael Collazo will be reporting live from Puerto Rico for the first round. So we'll have some baseball coverage as we get a little closer to the season. But for now, it's just strictly a fashion choice. I don't wear wigs. I don't have like cool beanies. So rocking the fills here for that hair. You know, how we fight back and make sure, do everything we can for these concentration camps not to proliferate our country is going to define all of our legacies. $38 billion they have to build these camps, which would house hundreds of thousands, if not over 1 million people at any given time. And look, as we said, and I think a lot of y'all are getting it now, more and more people. This was never about immigration. This was never about criminality. This was a mass incarceration of Latinos and other people that people of color and other people that want to control. And, you know, do we want to say it's a sort of a test case for controlling the entire population, aka Soviet Union? Probably. But at the same time, there's also the effect of slowing down, you know, the bad buddy America, which we saw is rising in a joyous way and in a very powerful way. We saw from Benito Bull. You know, how we deal with this issue is going to define our legacies, including mine. And so there's a lot of layers to it, right? So on the legislative side, you know, the government shutdown is begun for that small part of the government, really just DHS. So there's really other than disruptions at airports with TSA workers, unless we have a unfortunate string of several natural disasters, it could impact FEMA funding. But basically, it's going to be a minor inconvenience. It's even not, honestly, not going to even impact DHS that much in the short term because they have plenty of money from the beautiful bullshit bill last year. But it is a sign that we're not going to provide them another penny unless they do some very serious reforms. So on the political legislative side, you're going to keep calling your elected officials and demanding that that they don't vote for another penny for this organization. And, you know, they really should just forget about it. You know, don't give them anything. If it goes to election day, so be it. And on the activist side, from a national perspective, so if you don't live in the vicinity of one of these proposed or functioning detention center concentration camps now, so if you don't live near Dilley or you don't live near, you know, in Elizabeth, New Jersey, or you don't live one currently, or there isn't one being planned in your area, you need to raise the alarm of the fact that these things exist. They're going to proliferate, and they're just going to be the biggest scourge, you know, in our nation's history since, you know, I don't know, slavery, you know. So Well, I guess the Japanese internment camps too, but just an incredible scourge in terms of the scale of it. And we have to really elevate the message of it. The challenge with the challenge with messaging around the concentration camps is that the ICE activity in the street, in the videos, obviously in the murders have been the most shocking, but just a general terrible behavior. Um, is goes viral and it gives people that visual image. The worst of what's happening um in these centers, we're not going to be able to see, or it's going to be very difficult to see. It's one of the things that I'm pushing, and I want y'all to continue when you're talking to your legislators, is we not only want them to vote against the DHS funding, we want them elevating this issue in their public comments. We want them standing with activists publicly in front of these centers, um, at hearings or in local government settings where the zoning and the conversation around having one of these centers, particularly in their community, is taking place. And we need them in a regular rotation and ideally coordinating with their other local federal officials to do the allowable on-site inspections, so that they and the court has already affirmed that a member of Congress can go visit one of these ICE facilities anytime they want, and to do that on a regular basis, coordinate with their fellow federal officials, their other senators, so that people are in there constantly going in and out, and then immediately reporting out what they see. And if they can snap a picture, better. But to share those stories, elevate those stories. There's a child, a 2-month-old, in the detention facility, Juan Nicolas, which I'm following, which I'm documenting, which I'm keeping a very close eye on, in Dilley, Texas. Congressman Joaquin Castro just gave an update. There's a few Latina, I'm sorry, I don't have their names, Latina influencers and legal and lawyers that are down, and reporters that are covering it in South Texas. Much respect to them. We have to keep elevating the story. There needs to be 75 Joaquin Castros and members of Congress going in their local community, raising awareness around these issues, whether they have one or not, or it may be proposed. So that needs to be a push with our federal officials. And then we just keep raising the issue. In the same way we're raising the issue about the Epstein files and the bullshit going on with ICE in the street, we need to keep raising the issue of the dangers of these concentration camps that are going to be, they're trying to proliferate our country. That's cannot happen. And we have to understand that that's the attitude it's got to be. And then lastly, and it's not going to be as glamorous, but we've got to physically be present to organize in our local communities when they try to open these up. I just saw, I have leaders in Berks County, Pennsylvania, and Schuylkill County, Pennsylvania, that are part of the effort to push back on the two warehouses that the federal government just bought to be converted into ICE detention camps. And it's incredible because even in a very white, conservative, agricultural, rural corner of the counties, the local white folks don't want this bullshit either, for lots of reasons. I mean, it's so bad that Senator Fetterman's against it. So that's zoning meetings, that's city council meetings, that's prayer vigils, and I even see fam with listening devices near them so they could try to hear, get some communication from the people that have been imprisoned in these concentration camps. All of that has to get done. We have to let them know physically, spiritually, that we're with them, that they're not going to be forgotten. These people that are being put in these camps, they're going to put them, pregnant women in these places. I mean, how evil you got to be? Talk about something unchristian. And so that's going to define our legacy, how we handle this one. Yeah, what happens in the street is horrible. Those are moments in time, and it's terrible. Don't get me wrong, but they're moments in time. This is long-term torture that's going to result in more people dying, more people having life-changing medical conditions because of it, and the trauma that's going to happen, especially to these young people and children and young innocent families. You can't put a price on that for people's lives. So we're going to keep blowing the whistles. We're going to keep calling Congress, but we've got to add and incorporate this awareness and this activism against pushing back against these detention centers at the top of the list. And by the way, talk about an example of we got, as Tupac said, we got money for war, but not feed the poor. We $30 billion for this bullshit to buy a bunch of warehouses and in cage people like animals. I mean, we could solve homelessness and pay for pre-K with that money and school lunches and all kind of stuff and pay teachers, and we still have some change with that freaking money. All right, lighter note here. I tell you, I think about it. I really do, because it's day 10 of the glow of the Benito Bowl, and I've been thinking about it because it's 10 days, and I first of all, one of the things that's been so fun about it is the content that it's spurred on of the analysis. Y'all have been fantastic, everybody. All the Puerto Rican stuff has been great. All the Latin American groups, how they were seen. Lo Dominicano with the beginning, and Lo Caribeño with the sugar cane, and all the different países que he shouted out, Lo Caribeño, the Latin American countries that don't get as much love on the international stage like we do. The businesses, the tacos and the taco stand in LA, and all the different, this is awesome. Y'all have been great. African Americans' reactions wonderful. The global part, I mean, the conversations, anyway, we're going to get to it. It's been really cool. But I think the biggest thing, now that we're 10 days away from it, talk about the legacy of the Benito Bowl. I don't even want to get into where it ranks in terms of like the best performance. That's so subjective. And the bottom line is, I don't care how wonderful a rapper, entertainer / singer Benito is. The big pop singers are always going to be, they just resonate with more people. The big voice diva types. And, man. I mean, Michael Jackson, Prince, those kind of people, you can't. It was a different era. It was more of a monoculture. That's just different. That's just different. You can't. I'm not even going to get into that. That's not even the conversation I want to have with Benito. The conversation I want to have with Benito, and I'm putting it on the table here, is that regardless of where you think it ranked in terms of the quality of the performance, where it ranked in the best performances, without a doubt in my mind, it will go down as the most important Super Bowl performance ever. Because, first of all, it's been 10 days. There's all still people are talking about. And how many new fans that he has. And how much awareness that it's brought. With all the layers, all the issues that he touched upon in those 13 minutes. The conversation about colonialism. The conversation about unity. The Americas. It's raising awareness for Canadian pride. Canadians feel more seen. Canadians are now saying they're from Canada. I've seen Korean content creators talking about raising awareness of how if it wasn't for the Borinqueneers, the Puerto Rican army troop that were some of the most decorated troop in American history in the Korean War, basically was like South Korea may have lost that joint without the Puerto Ricans. My grandfather was out there. One of my grandfathers was in the Army at the time, or the Navy at the time. And, they're raising awareness about, hey, we want y'all to know how much Puerto Ricans have done for us. The Filipinos, talking about the legacy of sugarcane, the cultural connection with Latin America, the colonial relationship with the United States, with Hawaii, with the Philippines, with Cuba, Puerto Rico, the La Operación, the sterilization, the treatment of the U.S. government, stealing sugarcane land from families, including my wife's family, as it turns out. I didn't even know that until this all came out. And all of the different vestiges of colonialism that continues this day. Puerto Rico is the oldest colony in the world. The resistance. Benito this weekend, talk about someone that could have used a Cancun vacation after his 7-8 days between the Grammys and the biggest performance he's ever, biggest audience he's ever going to have with the Super Bowl performance. You know, the Benito, since we've seen each other, fam, did 3 shows in Buenos Aires in the River Plate Stadium. Much respect to my man Alex Easdale, who was at the first one Friday night. One of my good homies was the Argentinian cat, was there Friday in Buenos Aires. He just made history there with 3 historical performances, brought out, I mean, did a homage thing with Messi. The crowd was inspired against their to chant against their Trump-like president, Milei, whatever. Milei. It's inspired. Benito's inspiring resistance and culture in Argentina. There's a plena band in Argentina now. When I was a little kid, Argentinians were not doing no Puerto Ricans. They look down on us. Caribbean people, you know, habla inglés. You know, I don't habla español. Look at these people now. They're following us in resistance and cultural expression. You know, with all due respect to all those other performances are wonderful. That didn't happen. Some people, I mean, there was, you know, Kendrick, I think, for African Americans, a certain crowd within the awareness, and, you know, a lot of that was great. But that to me was a very, I can't speak to the impact of the African diaspora. Maybe there was some of that. I'm sure there was. And I'm not saying it wasn't significant. I think that's probably one of the more significant ones. I don't see the comparison. I just saw something on CNN, fam. Bad Bunny has a +7 approval rate in the United States. Y no habla inglés. And by the way, Trump's like -30. Bad Bunny could be president in 2028. Fam, come on, look at the numbers. A couple other things. I think it's definitely going to be the most impactful historical Super Bowl performance ever. There's no question about it. We look back on this 20 years when Latinos are running everything in the United States. And by the way, we're going to be nice to everybody. Y'all going to be cool. Don't worry about it. And we'll have fun doing it. And half of us will all be intermarried anyway. You see what's popping now. Even the white supremacists can't find. Anyway, that's the story. You know, coño. I mean, who's more the American dream than Bad Bunny? 10 years ago, it was bagging groceries. As a global icon and doing it like in a fun, unifying way. And by the way, what a business him and Ribas have created. Him and Noah Saad and Jorge Babon and Ali and all those people, Ali Babon and all those people. It's the greatest small business story maybe in Latin American history. And by the way, you saw Ronald Acuna, my man, was who's part of Rima Sports. You know how like Rich Paul and LeBron used to get pushed back because of the agency thing. The MLB don't want Rimas taking over, fam, because they do everything they can to push back. If you know the story, they didn't want. Scott Boras told Correa and Lindor, it wouldn't be a good idea if you let Bad Bunny pay for the insurance, of course, because you don't want Rimas to look good, because you don't want Bad Bunny to take all the Latino superstar players from your clientele list. So he's going to take the sports part over too. Watch. Much respect to Rimas. Quick shout out Lady Gaga. You know, that was one of the most emotional moments for me. I'll tell you why. Because, first of all, you got to understand, I grew up in Philadelphia. I'm born and raised in Philadelphia. My connection to my Puerto Rican side in a lot of ways in my family, I mean, I grew up with all Puerto Ricans in Philly. I didn't have a lot of relatives in Philly per se. So I'd go to Puerto Rico once every couple years to see my mom's side, the Spanish-speaking island, Jíbaro side, with the Gonzalezes are the best of the best people. I'm so proud to be a Gonzalez. It's one of the great joys of my life to be a Gonzalez. Those are real Puerto Ricans. And my dad's side, I'd go to New York for weddings. The Rosados, my grandmother's side, who are the shit. New York. That's New York right there. The Bronx, Brooklyn, like the real cool shit, you know? And I'd go to the weddings and all that whole wedding vibe was, to me, is New York, New Rican life. And then for Lady Gaga to come out, the quintessential Italian theater kid girl in New York, probably grew up with a lot of Latinos, probably, you know, this was probably one of the biggest thrills of her life to be a part of this moment. To come and do this theatrical New York theater girl interpretation of a humongous, wonderful pop song that she did with another Puerto Rican, Bruno Mars, with the salsa flavor, band in that wedding context, fam. I mean, that's as much. That moment was as much of my life as anything in the show. So I'm English speaking first, and that fusing of kind of like American R&B, American pop, the Broadway twin flavor that she got with the way she sings, and then the salsa. I mean, that's my New York half. You know, what I mean, that's who we are, and that's the culture, the New Yorican culture that was part of hip hop. That was the salsa, the la salsa dura, la salsa gorda, the banging of shit. Even more than the island salsa was a whole conversation. Freestyle, hip hop. Thinking about our friends K7 and Betty D. That was them, because that was them. You know what I mean? Like, that's their Brenda K. Starr. You think about those New Yorican music legends that encapsulated their culture right there, that moment. And Lady Gaga just adds to her incredible legacy. You know what's funny about Puerto Rican is that we have so many incredible performers, we kind of forget some of them. So, cuando empezó Ricky Martin cantando Lo que pasó en Hawaii, first of all, that 40 seconds, Ricky killed it. Ricky destroyed that moment, and he took over the stage. You forget this guy's one of the world-class entertainers ever. And for Puerto Ricans, fam, you got to understand something. We've been following him since they had Chiquitito, like 11, 12 years. He was a Menudo. He was the little guy in Menudo. He wasn't just in the boy band. He was the little kid in the boy band. And he was a star. And we knew when he was 11, 12 years old, this guy's going to be humongous. And look who he became. He's 55. We've been following him over 40 years. So what Ricky means to us is, I mean, the fan. He's fan. And then, but, getting a little older, other people take center stage. We have all these other incredible artists. So you kind of forget, but fuck, man, Ricky Martin. I mean, I'm so glad he had that moment. And all the political significance of Lo que pasó en Hawaii, the colonialism, Hawaii. Yes, but just, I mean, what a fucking showman that guy is. I mean, he just killed it. God bless him. Much respect to Ricky. By the way, we'll talk about it other times. My mom's number one. Oh, my God. My mom fucking loved Ricky Martin. Whew. That was her puppy. Oh, so much. The other thing I want to say, everyone's talking about everything else, every other detail. When people talk about the wedding, everyone goes to the little kid sleeping on the chairs. And of course, that's quintessential Latino, Puerto Rican, New Rican moment. But I had already seen that. If you know Bad Bunny, the Nueva York video had that. So we already kind of gone through that emotions of that piece. The one that fucks me up is the fucking cake. Shout out to Valencia Bakery in the South Bronx, which made that cake. And I believe they made the one for the Nueva York video. I mean, when I think of Puerto Ricans, I think of these freaking humongous back in the days, these humongous obnoxious cakes. And I don't think of it as like a positive thing. I don't like cake. And Puerto Ricans have this thing about smearing it all over you when you're a little kid, when it's your birthday, when you're the fucking little one, when you're the one from Philly that came to the Bronx for the party. They're always wanting to fucking put cake all over your face. I fucking hate you. Put it in your mouth, put it in your eyes, and fuck up your clothes, put it in your ears. I fucking don't like cake. I appreciate the bakers that make them, and most people do like them. So it's not a happy memory for me, actually. Cakes drive me nuts. They fucking drive me nuts. But it's part of our culture, fam. And that humongous slice they pulled out. I mean, God. My man hit it on the head. Familia, don't forget, please, you go to bed night, fam. You got to keep praying for Juan Nicolas, these children in these ICE detention facilities. And you got to do something for them, for their art yard legacies. We got to do everything you can to make sure that there's a minute. No, this is going to happen. We know what happens. We know they got a lot of money. And it's going to be hard to stop. And, federal government can lease a property and do what they want 9 times out of 10. But we can stop this. There's New Mexico passed a law said we can't have these facilities in our state. Senator Wicker, Mississippi, Lo Más Conservativo, and MAGA said, no, we don't want this bullshit in our state. So the momentum is on our side. Light is the best deodorant or whatever that phrase is, because the more we expose what this is really about, fam, even people that aren't with us on a lot of things are going to wake up and not want this, because they don't want their legacies to be this. Even if we disagree with them on other things, they don't want their legacies to be this. Familia, subscribe to my Substack page. You get it first. You get the Collazo Show first. We'll have an episode later this week. I'm working on some great guests. Thank you so much. Continue to work on our legacies, and have a wonderful day.